Yo, what's up guys? So last video I made a fully working chessboard where you could take pieces and move them around the board. The issue was that there was no regulations and no legal moves. So what I've been working on is I've made a code program that can find all the legal moves in chess. The only issue is I have not coded checkmates or checks or stalemates yet, which is going to be slightly harder, but this is a really good foundation. So for the past two chess videos, I've been kind of showing you guys how I put everything together. This is going to have to be more of a brief explanation because there's no way I'm going to can walk you through all I put here. So this is going to kind of be like a showcase slash brief explanation because there's no way I'm going to be able to show you guys how I put all this together. So it starts pretty easy. I define a function called legal moves, and I have my letter dictionary, and then I found code that basically just reverses it. So that way I can take coordinates on the board and turn them into letters that the person can interpret. So I just started with the white pawn. It was pretty easy. I basically just said go forward if there's nothing in front of you, and then if there's stuff diagonal of you, you can attack diagonally. And then for the black pawn, it was basically the same thing, just in the opposite direction. Pretty easy. And how I identified the coordinates is I basically just enumerated through the board and the ranks, and I just found coordinates, and if there's a piece of those coordinates, I would identify the legal moves for it. And it's all being put into a list called legal moves. Then I have my rooks, and so I basically used a for loop and its current coordinate to figure out how far away it is from the edges of the board, and I just looped through those. And I basically just said if there's a space, you can move there, and if there's a piece, see if it's on your side, and if it isn't, you can take it. So I really just did that 4 times for the rook. And then I did the bishop, which was I created temporary coordinates here. So I turned my original coordinates into these RA and EL temporary coordinates, and I would have a loop where I'd basically increase and decrease them by 1 to form diagonal paths. And I did the same concept. If there's a space, you can move there, and if there's a piece, identify which side it's on, and if it's on the opposite side, you can take it. So I just did that 4 times. Then I had the king, which was basically 8 different directions, which is a little more difficult. But what's nice is they can only move 1 in those directions, 1 space in those directions. So I basically just copied the same code, just modified the coordinates, and now we are at the queen. So the queen was basically just a copy and pasting of the rook and the bishop move patterns. It's very, very similar. The main issue with this was the variables. I don't have to, but I prefer to change the variables to make debugging easier. So if I see an error occur, if it was just legal move, I would have no idea where that is. But if it showed the variable that it had the issue with, I would have some sort of idea what I'm working with. So I basically the queen is basically just copy and paste of the rook and the bishop. And then the last one I did was the knight, which was, as you can see, it's a little shorter actually. These try and accept chunks are a little shorter because with the knight I tried to experiment a little more with it. One thing I realized that instead of doing if the piece you want to take is white and your piece is black, you can take it, and vice versa, I can just say if the piece color is not the same as your color, then you can do the take. And I experimented more with the notation, so I was just doing a lot of pluses and strings and variables and stuff, but instead I can just combine it all into something like this. So that was just more of an experiment for me. So that's basically the knight moves. Towards the end of my coding, I realized that the moves were all stored into one list called legal moves, and not into white or black moves. And the issue with that, if I wanted to sort the moves into white or black code like while they're being made, then this works well with the pieces. If the piece is white and your piece is black, do that, then I can just sort it into black moves or white moves. But then up here for the space, when there's nothing to take, it doesn't identify whether it's white or black. So I would have to add a lot more code to every single one of those chunks to identify whether it's a white or black piece. and I'm not doing that because that's too much work. So what I did is I did something like this here. So I created two lists, white and black moves, and then I basically just went through every single legal move, and I broke up the move into a list, and then I found the coordinates of each piece, and I basically said if it's white, then add that move to the white moves list, and if it's black, add the moves to the black moves list. And then I add an extra argument to the legal moves function, and it was just player, and so it just defined what it returned. So if player's W or for white, it returns white moves, and if player is black, it returns black moves. And so down here, this is the loop that basically creates my chess board, or my chess game. So it sets up the board, it prints the board, and then it finds the legal moves of white, and for now I have it just print the legal moves so I can actually see what's going on and make sure there's no issues with the moves. And then there's move, and if you notice I add another argument, which is legal moves, that basically just checks if your move is in legal moves, and if it is, do it. If not, it says move is not legal, and it will have you put in a different move. And it's basically just the same thing for black. And this is in a while loop, so it just loops. So let's test it out. So as you can see, there starts to become more and more legal moves as the game progresses, because everything's getting opened up and everything's developing. So there are a few things you may have noticed. One, there is no option to castle. I have not programmed a castling yet. There are no checks, so there's also nothing to avoid checks. You can actually move yourself into check and it will not identify that as an illegal move. So there are a few more things to code, but the bulk of it is coded. So I'll probably be playing more of this, just debugging and making sure I didn't mess up any code. But for now, that's about it. So, peace.